Hi everyone, welcome to the April edition 2023 of the intelligence briefings that are a big feature in Farsight. Now, there's a different type of a focus today. I'm going to be commenting a lot on one particular area of our world, our world of education. And I want to explain both why Farsight exists and why this is so important for us to address this. Okay, so Farsight stuff is, first of all, not easy to do. That's why you don't get it anywhere else. You don't have like competition with many other outlets trying to do this stuff. You have some other people doing remote viewing out there in the internet, but the hits are like less than 1,000 for a video or something, 600 for a video or something. Not that many people are watching that type of a thing. But what we're trying to do is to get the information that we're doing out to the mainstream, to get it to the point where it changes the future of humanity, changes the course of the way this world is evolving. Crucial to this is things such as outreach to universities and colleges. Now, we have done outreaches to military and outreaches to government, outreaches to different types of groups, but this time we're going to show you the outreach to universities and colleges. Now, let's get this straight. Colleges and universities are not paradigm busters. They don't go out there and try to destroy old ideas and create new ideas and stuff like that. That's done by individuals. Colleges and universities are economic aggregators. They collect money. They collect money from tuitions, they collect money from donations, they collect money from grants from National Science Foundation, other sources. And with that money, they sponsor research and pay for all types of things, from administrators to colleges, professors, buildings, all that type of stuff. They're not going to follow a wild goose chase somewhere where it's going to make it look like their investment in all of this stuff to produce a cash cow of big bucks for the educational environment. They're not going to follow anything that's cheap looking, that looks like it's just a new age fluffy thing that's appearing on the internet. They're just not going to do that. So it's actually very important for us not just to tell you what's really going on, not just for us to show you about remote viewing, not just for us to show you even videos of UFOs, but to us to do it in a way that's compatible with the mainstream quality. If we don't have mainstream quality, no one's going to take us seriously. And colleges and universities are simply going to dismiss it. The influencers within the mainstream are not going to take anything that doesn't look like them or better than them in terms of what we do. So getting that quality is absolutely important for our mission. So we cannot rely on a volunteer remote viewers, people who just say they'll do it and they have a one session that they do on a Sunday, and then you have to beg for them to do it another 4 or 5 months from now. We have to have professional remote viewers that do this for a living, and that we can demand a certain level of quality, and we control their training, and they have to do it exactly the way we want so that we control the quality of the information gathering. So paying the remote viewers is absolutely crucial because this is what they do for a living. Now, understand that I don't take any money from Farsight, but we don't have any remote viewers that would do this for free. So they have to have the ability to pay their bills in order to do this full time. And in order for them to do it full time, that's the only way you're going to get the quality up so that they can do what they do. You really see the quality in extraordinary ways when we do our mysteries projects that come out in the middle of the month. Because those mystery projects, unlike the Human News or the ET News where you do one session at a time, the mysteries projects have the viewers go deep. They do multiple sessions. They go deep into a target, and you really get to see what they can do. So those mysteries targets can really blow your socks off to show you how much they can actually get out. Now, a lot of our mysteries projects deal with extraterrestrial content, but other mysteries projects deal with like China and Russia, the leaders of those countries, and other political things. We even have mysteries projects that covered the 9/11 event, JFK assassination. We do a lot of different things. And you don't get information like that from anywhere. And part of the reason we do the political things is so that the political workers out there, the political, powers that be, will notice what we're doing. So one of the reasons we did the China thing was so that the people both in the United States, Europe, and in China would notice, hey, we can do this, and we can follow what you're doing, and that's very important for them to understand that we're relevant to what they're doing. Now, if we were doing this in a goofy, new age, fluffy way with cheap audio, cheap video, no one would take that seriously. But the fact that we can do it with such a level of finish, polish, it makes a big deal. Now, paid subscribers for FarsightPrime.com, they're the only people that make this possible because we don't have any other source of income. Our streaming service is what gives us all the money that we do. The camera that you're looking at right now, that's a $5,000 piece of camera equipment if you include the lens and the stuff that's associated with it. The audio equipment that's connected to the camera, that's another $1,000. Actually, it's more than $1,000. The mic alone was $1,000. The computer equipment, the studio, the glass light board, all of this stuff. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff, and we can't make this quality without all of that stuff being there. So the paid subscribers really are doing everything. The real question is, what do the paid subscribers get for all of that? Well, they get a lot. And so if you are a paid subscriber, you're getting a lot. And if you're not a paid subscriber, you're missing out on the core of what we do. For example, the Mysteries Projects. Once a month, these Mysteries Projects come out, and those Mystery Projects actually convey the long-term story that we're developing that you're not getting anywhere else. For example, a lot of people are upset sometimes when we talk about Earth as a prison planet, because what they want is to say, they want to hear good things, that the vibes are good, that everything is sort of nice. Now listen, folks, let's be real about this. The New Age idea of saying you manifest your own destiny, and I don't want to think any negative thoughts, I only want to think positive thoughts. Listen, folks, those that control you are smiling from ear to ear when you say stuff like that. You're a nice little bunny in a cage. Be that way. Just have good vibes, good thinking. The reality is, this world is very complicated. And if you look at the world around you, there's all types of stuff happening. Passivity is death. Passivity lets you surrender to the slavers. Anybody who says, I'm just going to have good vibes, you're going to be enslaved. You're going to be controlled. People are going to come in and say, hey, that's great. Be something like that. When you look at the slavery that happened in the American past during the slave era, well, it was absolutely forbidden for slaves to be taught how to read, because they didn't want the slaves to be able to do anything. They didn't want them to be able to think about what possibilities could actually be there. They wanted them to be passive. And in situations where they're not passive, they get beaten, but you control the information that they have access to by not letting them read, and by controlling the information that they have access to, you control 95% of their entire rebellion spirit. So when we talk about the prison planet idea, it should not be too much of a surprise to you. Listen, all of us were extraterrestrials. We came from someplace. You didn't begin your existence here on Earth when you were born here as a baby. You were already an extraterrestrial. The real question is, why are you here and what keeps you here? And the real question is, when you think about this as a prison planet, look at the Earth. Look at all the conflicts that occur. Everybody on Earth was an extraterrestrial, so we're acting like the extraterrestrials act themselves. Up there is weird. Up there is a very, very confrontational, polarized. The extraterrestrials we have known through our remote viewing studies, they're armed to the teeth. Not just a few of them. All of them are armed to their teeth. Now the real question is, they have to defend themselves. And so what we do, humans on Earth, we have different groupings to defend ourselves. The NATO groupings, South American groupings, different groupings. They defend themselves economically with economic pacts. They defend themselves militarily with military agreements. The real question is, do you think that's just us? Do you think humans are the only aggressive, warlike species in the entire galaxy or universe? Do you really think that? That is a crazy proposition. Science. The only thing you can say, science, is you have to have a sample, and that sample will tell you what the aggregate does. Now, we only have one sample here, a sample of one, this planet. Until we know more about what other species do out there, gathering information other ways, the only thing you can predict is the mean, and you have a mean with a sample of only one, so your sample of only one is it. And what we have here is warfare and defense agreements and standoffs and all types of stuff that we have. You have to assume that's exactly what happens up there. We're no different than the ones up there. That's where we came from. And so when we actually talk about Earth as a prison planet, and you're getting no information about that anywhere else, what do you think? And what would actually happen if extraterrestrials came here or traveled anywhere? They would do exactly what humans do. We colonize, we conquer, and then we exploit. That's what humans do. That's the whole history of human exploitation and growing and making agreements and everything. We want to get something from other places. And when it's easy to colonize, we just colonize. And with military stuff, we just sort of force our way. And then when it's more difficult, when the local civilization starts to rebel, then we make agreements that we have sort of a collaborative arrangement between one nation and another. Ex-colonies, former colonies, then becoming part of a larger collective. But we make those agreements, and that's the way we act. And for you to think that that doesn't happen up there is nuts. It does happen up there. It's just, and you have to, from a science perspective, you have to say the mean. Now listen, folks, when you have no other information, the mean is your only prediction. One of the things about statistics is you look for things like regression, where you look for a line, and that gives you basically an idea as you change in one variable, then you change in another variable. That's called inferential statistics, so that you have two variables, and you say, well, if I know more about one thing, then I know more about another thing. But if you don't have that, then the only thing you have is the mean, and that's the only scientific prediction you can have. So whatever you see here, you just have to assume is going on up there. So, all right, so you're a little upset sometimes when Farsight comes out with stuff saying, hey, look, folks, our information is that the bad guys have not left, everybody's still here, this is operating as a prison system, and you're getting fed a whole bunch of junk by all different sources, from channeled sources to mainstream news to everything else you can possibly think of. So when all that kind of stuff happens, yeah, it's sort of upsetting, but what do you want? Do you want us to just give you the fluff that you're getting from everywhere else until you have good vibes and let you march off to your kingdom of slavery where you just, surrender? No, we're not going to do that. We're trying to fight for you. So anyway, paid subscribers, what do they get? They get the Mysteries projects, but they get also the full intelligence briefing. Some intelligence briefings we actually give to the public large scale. But most of them, they have to get them all at farsightprime.com. We get the full ET news. You also get the full tutorials on how to do video recordings of UFOs. And folks, that's tremendous. Let me explain my reaction when we started to do, I've been doing remote viewing for a long time. I've been studying extraterrestrials for a long time. But when I started to take the camera and to take videos of the ships and then to see the ships right above my house, that changed everything for me. And that just happened. I said, my gosh, look at this. This is for real. It told me how tremendously oppressive the oppressive extraterrestrials actually are. They're everywhere, all over the place. They're all over the planet, and they're flying all over the place, and they're obviously trying to conceal themselves. This changes everything. You have to say, well, look, then it's not just you have to believe in remote viewing in order to believe that the extraterrestrials actually exist. You just take the cameras pointed up and you see it with your own eyes. It's a big deal, folks. It's a big deal. It's a game changer. In addition, on farsightprime.com, we have a new show, Identified Flying Object, where we have technical experts like Lincoln Lounsbury. It's hosted by Intisam, where he goes over, he's a flight traffic controller that has been in the main industry of flight traffic control in all the major airports, including Washington, D.C. He's written papers in industry journals. He's been a consultant for the aviation industry, and it's just he's a really he's a big wig. He's a really big authority, and he's coming in and looking and analyzing our UFO videos and analyzing them from the perspective of a professional skywatcher, which is an air traffic control person, and he's saying this is not a bug, this is not an aircraft that's human made. This is going 22,000 miles an hour. He's able to estimate all of that stuff. He's able to estimate the speed, the directions, everything. And he checks everything. He checks the flight radar stuff to make sure that there was no other aircraft in the area at that time that could possibly have done that stuff. He checks the weather to make sure everything is correct. And he goes through a lot of stuff. Air traffic control people are professionals at looking at the sky. And when they see our videos and then analyze our videos, it really helps. And you get that on farsightprime.com. You don't get that anywhere else. So it's not just remote viewing you get all of that other stuff, plus the other things that we're sort of throwing at you, from Motorcycle Diaries to our podcast. So you're really getting a lot from farsightprime.com. Now compare that to what you get from any of the normal streaming services that you get for entertainment. I subscribe to some of the major streaming services like most people do. And mostly it's because I have one show that I want to see. Okay, one show that I want to see. And then that show has one season, it goes on for a few months, and then I have to wait like 9 months before that streaming service is useful to me again, before the new season for that show starts up again. So I spend a lot of money on streaming services, but I get relatively little back from it because I have to wait for my show. They put up a lot of shows, but a lot of the shows I don't have any interest in. But with farsightprime.com, what you do is you get stuff relating to remote viewing and extraterrestrials every single month, like 7 different shows that we have, or different things, and it's constant. You're getting way more than what you get from any other normal streaming service, because it's all targeted to the genre that we really focus on. Anyway, the next major mysteries project that's coming out in just a week is super important, because that's where we actually take one of our collection of UFO videos, and we had the remote viewers go in and look at those things under totally blind conditions. They didn't know what they were going at, but they described the UFO perfectly. They described what it was doing, and that was also a UFO that Lincoln Lounsbury and the Identified Flying Objects show covered last month. So we're actually got a tremendous amount of information about that, verifiable stuff all over the board, and then the remote viewing stuff goes on top of it, and you say, so that's what they were doing. That's what you're going to get in a month. You can't get that anywhere else, nowhere else. And so many topics, so many different groups that do things like that New Age stuff. They have like this talking heads type of show where you have one person talking, then another person talking back and forth, and then they have sort of stock video that just fills in the blanks and makes some graphic effects and stuff like that. It's a common formula for all those types of shows. That's not what you get here. Here you get the actual raw stuff, real stuff, and and so on. I forgot to mention also the conversations with Harvey. We're going to be proceeding with that. Harvey has given us information on what is needed to actually see him, and he's not going to just sort of make it happen. They have the tech to actually do that. He's waiting for us to sort of do what we do, but nonetheless, we're experimenting, and we've got the basic idea. We don't have camera equipment yet that can actually capture the frequency range where they are actually visible, but we can interact with them using our own abilities, our own mental skills easily. But we're going to continue working on that. I know that you all want to see these things, and Harvey knows that, and the other ETs, they know that, but they're letting us follow this path of discovery. Okay. Anyway, so the next major mysteries project is super important with that. All right. So now let's go on to the major thing that we're here to talk about today, which is the universities. Now, I have a video I'm going to be showing you where I did, where it's actually an address to leaders in the academic community. So college professors, college presidents, provosts, deans, chairs of departments, things like that. And you're going to see that in just a few minutes. But let me go through some of the basics that you see sort of behind the scenes. A lot of people are complaining about the cost of colleges and universities in the United States. A lot of colleges and universities in Europe are free. So the colleges and universities in the United States, people end up leaving with a couple $100,000 of debt often, or sometimes less, $50,000, $80,000, but still, for a young person, that's a huge amount of money. And the real question is, what do the students get from that, for all that money? So the liberal arts colleges are probably in the most sensitive situation because they don't necessarily have a specific job lined up for them after that. Meaning, if you go to dental school, you're going to be a dentist. If you go to medical school, you're going to be a medical doctor. But with liberal arts, what do you actually, if you go to business school, you're going to work, you're trained to work in a business. But with a liberal arts education, those can be very expensive, and the real question is, what do you get from it? So my son, Aziz, you all know Aziz, he graduated from my university, which is a liberal arts college, and I was never so impressed with the degree as when he graduated. He got every job he's ever asked for. He got into graduate programs. The degree he got was really quite valuable in terms of opening doors. His ability to travel internationally and get jobs internationally, that was very, very impressive to me. But on the other hand, that's not always the case with people that have college degrees. And so the real question is, what do you get from it? Disclosure, the relevance of disclosure with regard to extraterrestrial life, the extraterrestrials, UFOs, as well as remote viewing, is actually really crucial for this. It's an important point in the conversation of what you get for the value of the money that you pay for college. So if colleges and universities fail with the disclosure and delaying the recognition of UFOs and remote viewing, those are big ticket items. And people will then wonder what it is that they're actually getting for all that money. And you have to understand that there's going to be a tremendous amount of change in the curriculums when this disclosure actually happens. A tremendous amount of change in the curriculums. And so people are going to say, well, what did I learn? I paid $100,000. What did I get from that actually? And so these are some of the things. First of all, physics. Let's go through some of the things they're going to get. They're going to have to revise with physics, in terms of the academy, in terms of subjects. Physics. First of all, interstellar travel. The mainstream idea in physics is taught in all physics departments that you cannot travel faster than the speed of light. Period. End of story. It's over. And time. Time moves forward. It cannot move back. Anything that happened in the past is done. It's gone. It's over. Anything that happened in the future doesn't happen yet. It's not happened yet. There's only the moment of the now. And classical and relativistic physics don't allow anything with regard to that type of thing to be, that the past exists and still exists and the future exists and multiple timelines, and it doesn't allow for any of that stuff. So really what we're talking about is a brand new level of physics, new physics. And then we're talking also about a generalization of quantum mechanics, because in quantum mechanics, you do have these types of things happening. For example, you can have a photon that's being released by a quasar very far away. And it's coming in our direction, but there's a galaxy in between. So that photon actually, because of the gravitational lens of the galaxy, it can actually travel on both sides of the galaxy. And what it can actually happen is, if you influence one side of the photon on one side of the galaxy, it can affect what happens to the photon on the other side of the galaxy instantly. And that's not supposed to happen. How can you do something? So if you're having some type of a quantum experiment that's in a laboratory, you say, okay, somehow something that happened here instantly affected something that happened over there, or something that happened here affected something that happened over there before it happened over here. Like the time, like something happens here, but it happened there first. And so these types of things happen. But when you're talking about the same type of effect on opposite ends of a galaxy, That's the type of stuff you talk about with quantum mechanics. Einstein was really spooked by quantum mechanics. He just did not like it at all because it had all types of stuff that didn't make sense with regard to his understanding of physics. Because his understanding of physics was correct, but it was also within a sandbox. It was correct within the sandbox, within the limits of what he was willing to conceive of. It worked, but beyond that, it didn't work. And quantum mechanics didn't work as far as he was concerned. So he was really upset by that. So now that's with physics with regard to those basic ideas. But if you go into the other areas, for example, the social sciences, what's going to happen to the social sciences? First of all, what's going to happen is people are going to have to wrap their head around the idea that there has been extraterrestrial intervention in human history for a long time. The universities have been following a dogma that there was a primordial solar nebula, and then there were planets, and then there was goo, and then there was single-celled organisms, and then there was a slow level of evolution, one step after the next, and finally, here we are, human beings. And they're going to have to wrap their head around the whole idea that extraterrestrials have been coming here for all that time, and they've been manipulating the gene pool and both living here and changing things, and that there has been tremendous intervention in human history. For example, now I'm not opposed to evolution. Evolution is real, it actually happens. But some of the stories that they put with respect to evolution are just plain nuts. For example, to get us humans, to pop us out of an ape, evolution speaking, that takes a long time. You're talking millions and millions of years. And they're essentially saying that you get 100,000 years and sort of you pop a human out of an ape. It just, you can't do something in that short a time. And civilization, when they talk about civilization starting a few thousand years ago, sometimes 3,500 years ago, sometimes 10,000 years ago, but ballpark circa like not too many years ago. And then you have buildings like the Great Pyramids and a whole bunch of other buildings around the planet that have these stone blocks that we can't even move today. It's just crazy to think that they did that with camels or horses or slaves on the back of slaves. I mean, it's just crazy to think of those things. And these buildings are like huge. I mean, they're like standing right in front of us. So the real question is, why did they build that architecture? What was going on? Obviously, there was some type of extraterrestrial involvement in the construction of these things and the moving of those blocks, because we can't move those blocks even today. So, the social sciences, in terms of extraterrestrial intervention with human history, that's going to have to change, and it's going to be big. And can you imagine how many textbooks are going to have to be thrown out when they try to do that? And then go to things like religion. All right, religion. Well, we're finding out that extraterrestrials have been involved in all major religions. All of them. So, religions are going to have to readapt to stuff like that. You have a lot of colleges that teach theology courses. Like, what? They're going to have to readapt to all of that. How much was actually planted by the extraterrestrials to manipulate the evolution of society? A lot of extraterrestrials sometimes do this for the sake of controlling the society, and some want to sort of help liberate it and sort of make it free. They said if you actually do this, you'll be a little bit better off. But nonetheless, it's extraterrestrial involvement on all of this. And then you get the idea of, and then you get the idea of the study of warfare. Well, that's going to have to change a lot. Study of warfare, which warfare? Are you talking, warfare with Napoleon at Waterloo on horses and stuff like that? What about the study of warfare when you talk about three-dimensional warfare, where you're not just running around on the surface of a planet, but you're actually going through galaxies and you're, Star Wars style? And that type of warfare, the whole study of warfare is going to be tremendously different. And then what about mass manipulation? We study things like totalitarianism, and we study things like propaganda. We study things, we have people like Hannah Arendt. She studied the idea, she wrote a book on the idea of totalitarianism and mass propaganda to get people to do things. She's sort of coming out of the World War II sort of way of thinking. And what do you actually do when you start talking about mass propaganda, when you realize the whole planet's been, has been a victim of huge levels of mass propaganda that's been sort of orchestrated by extraterrestrials, but at the same time has a huge number of human collaborators or the operators that let that stuff type of thing happen. So all of that's going to change. How do you change the social sciences to incorporate all that stuff? You realize how big of a topic that is? And then the humanities. Well, the origin of much literature. What about the Greek and the Roman gods? How many of you have actually taken courses where you study the ancient Greek gods or the ancient Roman gods? Well, people are taught in colleges that those are just things that the ancient people thought up, and they sort of made up these gods, Zeus and stuff like that, Aphrodite, to sort of make sense out of a confusing world. What happens when you realize that those were actual interventions, extraterrestrial interventions, where those things actually had their grounding in things that actually happened, and the people weren't just dreaming up these things; they were trying to make sense out of things that were actually being done to them by people up there. So when that type of thing happens, that's a huge issue. Okay, so now here's a question. With all those types of changes in the works with disclosure, and that's going to be forced on universities whether they want it or not at some point, how will students and parents react if disclosure happens and colleges and the universities drop the ball? When they spent all that money and the colleges and universities were not on the front lines of getting things changed, how much of the curriculum will then be obsolete? How many people will then say, well, what did I get with all that money? What did I pay for? Will the students feel that college is a ripoff and what they learned was wrong? So look at it from the other side of things. But what happens if universities and colleges are proactive on this? And then it can be said that the college students were introduced to the latest stuff first, and by being in the college and university environment, they were on the cutting edge before other people were able to sort of get the full story. So colleges and universities have a real incentive to not drop the ball, not to be behind the curve, to actually say they at least encourage the discussion of these ideas. So the big dilemma for colleges and universities is, do you stick with the cash cow arrangement that they currently have, which is the old curriculum, or do you start to hedge your bets and introduce new ideas, and that may very well turn out to be true? Meaning, how much are they going to trust their faculty to be telling the total truth of things? How much are they going to say, I'm going to bet the university's future and everything on what these professors are saying? Are they really going to do that? Or are they going to hedge their bets to say, well, just in case they're wrong, we should at least have a discussion with alternate points of view, okay? And again, the UFO videos change everything, because as soon as you see those, and as soon as you see them, you then say, oh, well, this is real. Well, then we have to adapt, period, full stop, end of story. So it throws out much of the college curriculum. As soon as you see one UFO video that you actually believe, then a whole bunch of the college curriculum has to go. So it's a big deal. There is a need to adapt. So what I have done is I have created a presentation that you're going to see in just a minute that is actually directly aimed at university administrators and professors, chairs, deans, provosts, college, university presidents, and things like that, that directly explains what we think should actually happen and their position, what their position actually is. And you're going to see that I'm actually offering a solution for them. And the offering of the solution is for Farsight to actually go to their locations and do stuff. Now let me explain this. You're going to see it, and it's best if I actually just show it to you, and so you can see it. This is a really, really, really big thing. Hi everyone. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight. This intelligence briefing is specifically designed for administrators and instructors within academia, specifically within college and university settings. My hope is that this briefing will be heard by many of the most important influencers in the academy. If you are a professor or instructor or lower-level administrator in the academy who has the ability to persuade higher-level administrators and/or influencers within the academy to watch this, it would be in everyone's best interest to do so, as I will explain as we continue. Remember, whether or not my ideas are accepted by the majority of mainstream academia, I myself am an academic, so I speak as a voice originating from within the academic community, even if it is a solitary voice. Much of the information that I will go over in this briefing will be new to members of the Academy. I ask that you bear with me until I get to the end. Academics can sometimes be very impatient people, willing to dismiss new ideas with stunning rapidness when those ideas conflict with their own favored assumptions of how they think the world works or should work. Academics label their most cherished collections of ideas as science, and they strictly limit the ideas that they allow to share that label. Well, like it or not, academics are intellectual gatekeepers, and the dilemma of all gatekeepers is that they always run the risk of disallowing the consideration of good information as well as bad information. So let me offer this light-hearted advice. As I continue, try to keep an open mind. There are three major elements that I must address today: remote viewing, extraterrestrial life, and humanity's current condition and dilemma. Beginning with remote viewing, or non-physical perception, it is generally assumed throughout nearly all of the Academy that remote viewing is impossible. The basic belief within the Academy is that only that which is physical is possible, and the transference of non-physical perception across time and space is dismissed as an imaginary thing left to the realm of pseudoscience. Well, according to this highly integrated academic belief system, only unscientific people believe in anything related to remote viewing. The idea that remote viewing can exist, and especially that it can be mastered to a high level of accuracy with considerable training and effort, is simply ludicrous from a traditional academic perspective. There are a great many research studies that demonstrate beyond any standard level of criteria, statistical or otherwise, that this belief in the impossibility of non-physical perception is simply incorrect. These studies can normally be published only in non-mainstream outlets due to a peer review gatekeeper system that disallows their publication in more mainstream outlets. Now, Carl Sagan voiced this near-religious belief system best when he claimed that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But this adage is not tenable, and it is not scientific. From a scientific perspective, it is the same as moving the alpha level of a statistical test to whatever arbitrary level is desired to avoid accepting a result. An alpha level of 0.05 is meaningless to such thinking, even though it is acceptable with respect to more favored ideas. The same is true for an alpha level of 0.01 or 0.001 or 0.0001, or however many zeros you want to put after the decimal point. Alpha levels are used to avoid rejecting currently held views that we assume to be correct unless proven otherwise, what we scientists like to call null hypotheses. While rejecting a true, currently held view is called a type 1 error, and avoiding type 1 errors is a good thing. But arbitrarily moving the alpha level of a test is not science. Changing the rules of the game whenever desired is not science. Carl Sagan's adage does exactly this, and when it is voiced by people holding PhDs, society tends to take such opinions seriously and to accept such opinions without debate. This is the power that academics hold over society. Usually academics use their voices helpfully and productively. They guide the belief systems of the masses. What academics don't fully accept is that they can also hurt people when they reject very different new ideas that nonetheless are correct. In scientific jargon, these are called type 2 errors. Scientists focus on avoiding type 1 errors, and they don't often worry about type 2 errors, despite the fact that when they move the alpha level of a test arbitrarily while reciting Carl Sagan's mantra in a desperate attempt to avoid rejecting a currently held view, the probability of making a type 2 error increases dramatically, and very valid and important new ideas are rejected. The basic assumption underlying the dismissal of remote viewing as a real phenomenon is that it is impossible for anything, including information, to travel instantaneously across time and space. Science considers information as something real. It is not just something that you think about. In an isolated system, when something that is organized in any way falls apart, and the organization vanishes, energy is released. So information is a form of energy, and energy is interchangeable with matter, and so remote viewing appears to be able to send energy, and thus matter, across time and space. And from a traditional scientific perspective, this is impossible. Of course, that does not make it impossible in real terms. It is just impossible from the traditional scientific perspective. And if the gatekeepers in the academy are not willing to consider that this belief is wrong, then where are we to go after that? The second major element that I must address today is the subject of extraterrestrial life. As with remote viewing, there is a basic assumption held by many members of the Academy that extraterrestrial life, if it exists at all, can't get to us here on Earth. The distances are too great, and there is a speed of light limitation such that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. And it would take unimaginable levels of energy and time for an extraterrestrial spaceship to get to Earth. Well, this belief is not too dissimilar to the previously widespread belief among the astronomical community prior to 1995 that the probability of there being planets around other stars is very unlikely. They claimed that the specific conditions needed for large planets to form out of the primordial solar nebula are simply too unique, too rare. Well, 1995 is the date when astronomers detected their first planet around another star, and planets have been discovered regularly since then, of course. But we too often forget our history, especially the stubborn history of our incorrect ideas. The belief that other planetary systems would be exceptionally rare in our galaxy and universe was never scientific. The only scientific claim would have been the mean. And before 1995, we had a sample of one solar system, our own, and that solar system had 9 major planets, an asteroid belt, comets, meteors, and all sorts of solar system junk all over the place. So the only scientific claim that could have been made until more information was obtained, through whatever means, would have been that the average number of planets around any star was approximately 9. That mean could later be adjusted as new discoveries are made and the sample size increases. But that is not what happened prior to 1995. That is not what was taught in many college and university classes back then. Connecting this to the subject of extraterrestrial life, we have a planet with literally billions of life forms, and for us to say that life is probably not existing in other solar systems is not scientific. The only prediction that we can make from a scientific perspective is the mean. In our sample of one planet in our solar system, we have billions of life forms, at least one of which is highly intelligent and technologically advanced. Until we have more data from other solar systems, that is our mean, and that is what we must predict with regard to other similarly configured solar systems from a scientific perspective. Connecting this with remote viewing, if remote viewing can transfer information across time and space, even reliably and accurately by highly trained practitioners, then it is possible to transfer both energy and matter across time and space in a manner that is not limited by the relativistic limit of the speed of light. We are talking about a new understanding of physics, and indeed the ultimate generalization of quantum mechanics, where such things appear to happen, to the macro world. But I don't want to get into the specifics of theoretical arguments here, although I have spoken and written about this elsewhere. Right now, I want to focus on the more general ideas that are preventing the Academy, widely defined, from moving forward. If, over the billions of years that this galaxy has existed, one can assume that eventually civilizations developed the science and technology to travel interstellar distances quickly, then the idea of us sitting on an isolated planet, trying to listen for distant radio signals as a gatekeeper test that might exist that life exists out there in the galaxy is nearly ludicrous. If civilizations can learn how to travel interstellar distances quickly, then they would likely act as humans do on Earth. They would travel, conquer, and colonize. In short, Earth humans trying to detect them on their home planets as the only acceptable proof of their existence is really weird. They would already be here, and those Earth humans who know about such extraterrestrials are simply trying to keep everyone else in the dark for their own reasons. Moreover, the goal of those extraterrestrial civilizations would not be to wake Earth humans up and make us galactic citizens. The goal of such extraterrestrial galactic travelers would be to control colonial assets with the most economical means possible. Indeed, that is where we are right now. The big problem is that there is a huge resistance within both the mainstream media, government, and the academy to publicly acknowledge this. If you stay with me a bit longer, I will explain how we can resolve this problem in a way that should be acceptable to nearly all college administrators. But first, this brings us to the last major element that I need to address today: humanity's current condition and dilemma. Look at our world today. We have a polarized world that is deeply conflicted. Our nations are armed to the teeth with weapons capable of destroying this planet. As before, the only prediction that we can scientifically make is the mean. Using the mean from our sample of one planet, Earth, we must assume that the rest of the galaxy is much like Earth. Making only the assumption that interstellar travel is possible among extraterrestrial civilizations with high levels of technology, there must be groupings among the galactic civilizations, groupings which are defended using extremely potent weaponry. As above, so below. Those guys up there must be like us down here, unless proven otherwise. You cannot assume anything other than what we see here on Earth. You cannot assume that our space brothers and sisters are all benevolent and that humans on Earth are the only warlike creatures in this universe. Until you have more data, you can predict only the mean, no matter how large the current sample size. So, for the sake of argument, let us say that the Milky Way galaxy is alive with all sorts of life, and that extraterrestrials are already among us in this solar system, and that governmental and select commercial and even academic elements are aware of this. Remember what was said by Haim Eshed, former head of Israel's Defense Ministry Space Directorate, former general and current respected professor. To summarize, he said that extraterrestrial UFOs exist, and their occupants have signed agreements with some governments to give them permission to operate on and around Earth. The extraterrestrials who signed those agreements do not want information regarding their presence or their activities to be made public. In short, there is active collaboration between the United States government and some other governments to work with some extraterrestrials and to keep that collaboration a secret. What Haim Eshed has not said is that the extraterrestrial community is highly divided and armed to their teeth. Moreover, not everyone would agree that the ETs who signed those agreements are the good guys. Indeed, our work at Farsight indicates just the opposite. Our governments are working with the bad guys. For anyone who has even a casual interest in UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, it is obvious that there has been a recent upsurge in the number of sightings of such phenomena worldwide of late. Moreover, photographic evidence is increasingly of really great quality. Images and video are being spread using social media in great abundance now, and this process is accelerating. Mainstream science continues to ignore all of this, but it is happening nonetheless. Some of the extraterrestrials, the ones who we at Farsight would call the good guys, are trying to push for disclosure, and governments and the mainstream are fighting to delay that. Indeed, there is a fierce struggle going on behind the scenes. Every time you hear of someone in Congress calling for a new committee to study the phenomenon, or of the military saying that they will create a new task force to examine the issue, that is all just one more step in a nonstop strategy of delay. It is impossible for the U.S. military not to know everything about the extraterrestrials, their spaceships, and their conflicts. That is simply impossible unless you assume a level of military incompetence that is simply beyond belief. The only thing that is possible is that the military itself is highly divided on the issue of disclosure, and that major struggles are going on behind the scenes. So, Let's refocus on the issues relating to the academy. Colleges and universities are not paradigm busters. They are economic aggregators who amass funds to support research into scientific realms. Funding non-mainstream ideas risks angering those who would send money in the direction of academic institutions, and academic administrators are loath to risk anything that might disrupt this flow of money, or their own careers would be jeopardized. So the incentives relating to the flow of money conflicts with the desire to break down obsolete paradigms. Until ideas become accepted by the mainstream, colleges and universities would not normally support such research. So we have a bit of a catch-22 phenomenon. Paradigm-busting ideas cannot be supported by the academy until they are supported by the mainstream. But the mainstream is loath to support ideas that conflict with cherished prior assumptions on which careers have been established. So, where does that leave us? Here is the situation in blunt terms. While colleges and universities are not paradigm busters, people are paradigm busters, and usually this means rare or select individuals who dare to fight the intellectual battles. Now, at this point, it should be obvious to even the casual observer that change is in the winds. At some point, the dam will break, disclosure will happen, and colleges and universities will have to adapt. Institutions will soon be faced with the prospect of rearranging their own internal houses in order to adapt to the new realities that will be thrust upon them. And this will affect not just the physical sciences, but the social sciences as well, and even the humanities. So where does that lead us now? Right now. At Farsight, we have begun to expand our activities to include demonstrating to others how to obtain physical evidence of the extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Well, it turns out that extraterrestrial spaceships use stealth technology to fly in the Earth environment. Stealth tech that requires specialized camera equipment to capture it. These ships also fly extremely fast, so fast that only advanced camera equipment can capture their movements. So we had to wait until commercially available tech became available that could overcome these two things. Long story short, at Farsight we now use specially modified cameras and high-end software to capture video evidence of extraterrestrial spaceships operating in Earth's atmosphere. It turns out that such ships operate in enormous numbers, and they can be captured on video during the middle of the day just about everywhere all the time. We at Farsight are publishing not only our own videos of such crafts, but also showing people how to take their own videos of these vehicles. You might say that we are democratizing scientific discovery in this field. We are now seeing that others are able to follow our instructions to successfully make their own recordings of such vehicles. Using this verifiable data, obtained with our own cameras and equipment, at Farsight we are combining this with remote viewing under blind and defendable conditions to perceive inside the vehicles, to describe who the occupants are, what they are doing, and where they are going. So, I am making the following offer to the academic community. If invited, I am willing to travel to colleges and universities to explain such things. I suggest that I give a talk to the academics and administrators who work at such colleges and universities, and I can also work with groups of individuals chosen by the universities in a one-day workshop to show them how to take video recordings of the extraterrestrial spacecraft with their own or university-owned cameras, and how to process those recordings using appropriately configured university computer equipment. The talk would likely be quite lively, in the sense that I would entertain questions from academics who might be very vocal in their support and or skepticism regarding the topics I have discussed today, and that is okay. I am willing to go through that, however comfortable or uncomfortable that may be. But the workshop with instructional activities should be separate, and they should be monitored by university personnel to ensure that there is no disruption to the flow of information. I do not want to fight battles while instructing people on how to use the cameras and computer equipment. I only want to show how it is done at that time. I would bring my own camera equipment to record the spacecraft on video, and my own high-end laptop where I can demonstrate to the live audience in an auditorium setting with a normal projector how to analyze the footage. I would ask for no financial compensation for this 1 or 2 day visit, and the only thing you would have to supply me with is normal travel expenses, reasonable hotel accommodations, and food that is appropriate for me to eat. I propose that this can assist college and university communities in adjusting to the coming changes. You do not have to endorse what I do or say. I only ask that you listen to the ideas, allow your academic members to ask me questions, and let me teach your community how to obtain their own video evidence that supports what I say. Once the communities see that the existence of the ET spaceships is a real thing based on their own images taken with their own cameras, then they will see that the secrecy agenda is very real, and they will be more open to the other things that we do at Farsight, such as remote viewing. This can buffer the college and university communities and their institutions from the disruptions that will result from the coming process of disclosure. It never hurts to be prepared. Academic administrators will naturally ask who else might be able to do what I have just offered. To be blunt, there is no one else who can do this except me currently. While I do not do remote viewing research or research relating to extraterrestrial life at my university, I nonetheless am the only full-time and tenured academic on this planet who can talk about such matters. There have been other academics who have ventured into this realm variously defined, such as the now retired Professor David M. Jacobs of Temple University and the deceased Professor John Mack of Harvard University. They all paid heavy professional prices for allowing themselves to think and to publish on such matters. I too have paid a heavy professional price for the activities which I have done outside of my university and for the ideas that I have entertained over the years. Nonetheless, the time has come for members of the larger academic community to hear about the research done at Farsight. The time has come for academic administrators to recognize that it would be strategically helpful for them to prepare their own communities for the coming changes. You don't want the financial donors of the future to be angry with you for not seeing this coming. You don't want such donors pulling their funds from your institutions because they blame you for not seeing what will eventually become obvious. You want to protect yourselves as administrators, and you want to protect your institutions. Nothing protects you and institutions more than by allowing a conversation to take place. In return, you can claim that you have supported the beneficial future of humanity by being a venue for the open discussion of ideas. It's a win-win situation with little risk to yourselves or your institutions. Insurance, if you want to think of it in those terms. But it is also fun and it's interesting in its own right. Disclosure is no longer a fringe issue. It is now a strategy for the future. Now, I have a special request. If you are an instructor, professor, or lower-level administrator in a college or university setting, it would be greatly helpful if you would forward the link for this intelligence briefing to a higher-level administrator in your institution, such as a dean, department chair, provost, or college or university president. It is highly unlikely that such administrators will stumble upon this briefing all by themselves. I have found that such administrators normally do not spend much time on social media. But if you could forward this briefing to them, plus an encouragement to watch it, it would be greatly helpful to getting the message to the right place. Then, if they want to pursue this further, they know how to contact me. Thank you for listening. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight. All right, so everyone, that was my plea, actually, to the college administrators, and hoping that they'll actually take me up on the offer and take Farsight up on the offer to allow us to actually show people how to do things. See, we're not interested in convincing people that what we're doing is right. What we're interested in is showing people how to convince themselves, showing people how to do it. Once you actually see the videos of the UFOs that not that somebody else took, but that you took, it's a game changer. You look and you say, oh my gosh, then it's real, it's really happening. Then you realize the whole secrecy is correct. You realize the whole disclosure issue is a huge deal. You then accept the fact that it's impossible for the government and the military not to know about this. Because if you can take the videos and the UFOs are above your head all the time, then you know that the military and the government knows about it all the time. You know that there's been a huge secrecy agenda going on for a long time. And then everything changes. All right. So anyway, that's the basic bottom line here. By the way, there was somebody that mentioned in the chat, they're wondering if we actually read the chat. Yes, we read the chat. And in fact, you'll see me glancing off to the side and looking at the chat while I'm talking. But in addition, when the recording part goes on, I'm reading everybody's comments, one at a time. So I actually do get to that. I do want to say that it's important for people to keep themselves civil. And as soon as someone starts making disparaging comments to other people in the chat, like you're all crazy or something like that, then I have to intervene. So I can't allow people to say negative things about other people in the chat, because it has to stay a civil and pleasant environment for people. Okay. But I like differences of opinion. So differences of opinion are great, but don't be a bully. That type of a thing. All right, so that is it for today's intelligence briefing. We've been going on for 1 hour and 4 minutes, and you've heard a lot. This is the issue. Now, we have done other intelligence briefings on outreaches to the U.S. military. We have done other intelligence briefings focusing on the actual mechanics of taking videos of UFOs. And this one was an intelligence briefing directly towards the sector of higher education. So that was that. And disclosure is going to require all the different participants in all the different sectors of society to start thinking about these, and they all have their own special interests. So we're trying to address that type of a thing. Guys, you are great. I want to thank you for being here. And this particular intelligence briefing, since we want people in higher education to actually watch it, we're going to actually keep this one up. Actually, I'm going to edit it and repost it up on YouTube, so it'll be up on YouTube as well as farsightprime.com. So most intelligence briefings are mostly just on farsightprime.com. This particular one, we want to make sure the academic community gets it in some way. So anyway, this one we're gonna do it that way. And do remember what I told you about what you get with the farsightprime.com. Some people say things like, the remote viewers, it's okay for them to be paid, they deserve to be paid. It's really not that. If you hire a plumber to fix your sink, do you say the plumber deserves to be paid? No, that's not what you say. You realize that the plumber's not going to fix your sink unless you pay him or her. I have to say him or her because we have plumbers around Atlanta that are women. So it's anyway, so the issue is that if you don't pay the plumber, they're not going to fix the sink. Well, with the remote viewing, the reason we moved to having professional remote viewers that do this for a living is because we couldn't get the quality and we couldn't get the constant training that was necessary to get the results that we wanted without them being full-time. So it's not that they deserve to be paid, it's that if they don't get paid for doing this, they're going to go off and do something else because something has to be done to pay their rent. They're not doing this in their free time. This is what they do. So it's like the sink. If you want your sink fixed, you have to pay the plumber. Well, if you want this type of quality at Farsight, not just in terms of paying the remote viewers, by the way, they don't get paid a lot, but they get paid enough to pay their rent and so on, but also all the equipment, it simply doesn't happen if we don't spend the money to buy these things. But in terms of myself, do know that I don't take any money from Farsight. I've never taken any money from Farsight. So I'm the one who's running the whole thing, and I'm the one who's getting no financial benefit from it at all. So, but everybody else, I have to pay or they don't do it. And I have to buy this equipment. I can't buy these cameras. I can't go to Panasonic and beg them to give us cameras. It's just not going to work. I can't ask Amazon to ship us monitors and HP to send us computers, and I can't ask Adobe and other places to send us software. They're not going to do it. Either we pay them or it doesn't happen. So the money that we use, that we get from Farsight Prime, all of it goes to give you what you get. And you get more here than you get at any other streaming service. Again, streaming services are great. I get them myself. But honestly, every 3 months, for 3 months, I'll get a series that I'm actually interested in watching. Then I have to wait 9 months of nothing before I get something else that's interesting. With Farsight, you get something every single month that's right in the genre, that's right in the same stuff, and it just keeps on going. And you don't get it anywhere else. There's no competition. There's no other people that are doing the kinds of things that Farsight's doing. So you really get a lot, and you're also enabling us to give you what we're giving you. So just know that at the end of every month, our budget is zero. We spend everything we get to give you what we got. All right, everybody. I am going to see you next month in the May Intelligence Briefing, but be sure you see the next Mysteries Project that's coming out in about a week. It's super, because what we did is we used our UFO footage that we got and then we showed you last month in the Identified Flying Objects show. We used that footage and we did a whole Mysteries Project on that. So it's not just the footage of the UFOs, but then we combined it. We made it a whole package. We went in with our remote viewers totally under blind conditions, and you see who's in there, what they're doing, and who they're aligned with. You see everything, and you see where they came from. It's unbelievable. So anyway, that's out in a week. Friends, we do this for you and we really love you. So thanks for being with us and hanging in here. So I'll see you next month, all right? Take care, everybody.